Okay, so you can see here, I'm going to start in from where I left off last time, and I did do a little bit of rendering. However, it was taking a little bit longer because I don't have that much RAM on this machine. I only have 8 gigabytes of RAM, but 16 would do the trick. So depending on the machine that you're using, how much RAM it has, and how many programs you're actually running is going to really make a difference on render time for you. Remember that when you do start rendering, and I'm going to show you again, that right now it's going to blur out, but it has to completely finish kind of ironing this out. So what it's doing is as every pass for the render goes by, you can see this little line traveling downward. And really what it's doing is it's kind of ironing out all those little pixelations there. So fully rendering it out is going to take a little bit of time. I'll stop the render and let's add some lights in here. And I also might play around with a different uh, texture for mine at the moment. And you can modify your choice by hitting this M next to your object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away a little bit of the specularity and then the transparency as well. I don't want it that transparent. But I do want to add a little bit more color. I want to make it orange. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking and holding my little color picker there for the orange area over here. See that it's kind of making it darker, and that's because let's grab perhaps an orange metal. I'm still in the metals area here, automotive. And so if I start with that, I can add some transparency to this, so that way it'll become a little bit more reflective, but it's brighter, and you can see it if I start rendering it. It now matches my complementary colors. And it's rendering a little bit quicker too because it's not glass. So let's add some lights to this. And so over in create, we can add a spotlight. And what we want to do here is almost what we did in the first assignment is we want to create some negative space, make that just as real with some cast shadows and things. So I'm going to point my light towards the sculpture. And again, by looking at the top view, I can kind of see what's happening there. I can bring the light up or down or bring it back further. I can also throw in or duplicate this light. And I'll do a Control D really quickly on my keyboard, drag that out, and then rotate it and point it towards the sculpture. And there it is. Kind of like that, but now I've got a little bit too much light from the sun itself. So what I'll do is I'll make it nighttime. Let's talk about the sky and fog here. I can change my sky and fog presets as well, almost like changing materials or putting materials in there. And I can make it nighttime if I wanted to. So that'll kind of dim the lights a little bit more. You can see what's happening there. And then maybe throw in another light. But one word of caution as well with the sky and fogs, make sure that you're sticking to skies that are using a lot of the same complementary colors that you use, because they do tend to, I'm going to zoom in here. So again, zooming in. And now we can see that I've got some nice cast shadows in the back. The spotlights are on there. So you can see that there's going to be some rendered cast shadows and reflections going on. And so, uh, play around with, again, the different skies. And you could just click there, and this one has a lot of orange in it, so there's going to be a lot of that bouncing off because the night is dark, so it's going to really darken everything out as well. So play around with the different lights, or different lights and different backgrounds. A little bit more on the lights. If you double click a certain light, you can increase the intensity of it. So diffusion, you can type in colors here. Specular, you could do visible lights and or infinite light, which will go through all the way, and I can click OK. But there you'll see that it kind of adds a kind of different effect there as well. So I wouldn't do visible light, but play around with the different capabilities here. I'm going to click that off. You can do different cast or a cast shadow and the ambience and shadow intensity and softness. You can play around with fall off here, which is squared, linear, or ranged. So play around with the different techniques here. Another cool thing you could do is change the color of the light. So you can make it, if I want it to a little bit more orangey or yellow. It's not really changing it too much there for me, but I'll click OK. So again, you can play around with the different intensity, but the sky is what's going to really add a lot of different ambience. It's going to bounce off things for you. I don't like that one. Maybe I'll do lazy afternoon. And make sure that, again, you move your camera around, bring down this horizontal line like like you saw in the principles of design for the horizon line not feeling so unnatural split there. So rotate your camera around, bring your camera down, maybe zoom in to an interesting area of your sculpture, and then render it. So I'm going to start my render now, and when we come back it should be fully rendered and ready for us to save out and submit. But let me talk about that too a little bit. Make sure that it fully renders and that you've got a strong composition with some nice cast shadows and a nice kind of abstract sculpture. Make sure that you're using the complementary colors for your background. Select one color, and then in the color wheel, I did provide that for you in the module. Look at the color wheel and again select a complementary color, meaning if you select one color, the one opposite to that is the other color. Decide what colors you're going to use on the sculpture, what colors you're going to use on the background, wall, table, and ground plane. And then what we want to do when it's fully rendered is go to File, Save Image As, if you want to flatten or compress it and save it just as an image for submission. But if you want to continue working on this file, make sure that you use just Save as a Bryce file. So that's located up here. Again, Save, we'll save it as a Bryce file. Save Image As will compress that out. Now, another thing you may notice too, and it didn't finish rendering here, unfortunately, but I'm going to go ahead and go through the motions here for saving it out. I'm going to save this as, again, this is going to be 2_quality_. Cordova A, or your last name first initial. And it might be 3 actually, assignment 3. Um, and I'll go ahead and save that. And again, it's use the number of the assignment that is currently there and last name first initial. And then now I can export this image, save image as, and I'll do a save image as, choose JPEG, save it to somewhere you'll be able to find it so that you could upload it via the homework portal. Make sure you're using max quality. So I'll say save. Although again, this is not fully rendered. This would be kind of unacceptable. You have to make sure that your pixels aren't showing and that everything is fully and clearly rendered.